Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the story about Naruto. What if Naruto had the cursed seal part 2? Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please do support for more awesome content and also hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. And also support the creator of this fanfic. I have created many playlists, check it out in the channel. So let's start the video. 1 week had passed since the beginning of Naruto's chakra, and like Anko warned, it was the living embodiment of hell. At first, Anko was against the idea of camping right at the training ground. However, that changed once the woman felt that she didn't want to cross the village every time she had to meet her favorite torture subject. So, they made camp right next to the forest of death. However, who's to say that Anko would even let the boy get his rest? One time, after not even 2 hours of sleep, Anko rudely awakened him with cold water and a lot of noise. Since that time, Naruto only fell asleep once he was sure that his teacher slept before him. The rude awakenings didn't stop though, but at least he managed to get more hours of sleep because of it. Besides that, and the obvious lack of ramen, which for Naruto was worse than the lack of sleep, his training was progressing rather nicely, and he was excited because of it. Naruto mused that he trained almost 20 hours every day and had approximately 4 hours in between to eat and sleep. Anko devised a peculiar method of training that aimed, most of all, 3 things at the same time: Taijutsu, Chakra Control, and Agility. It consisted basically of Anko beating the crap out of him for a good 3 hours every morning. She would use everything at her disposal, except obviously powerful ninjutsu, which would harm him more than she ever intended to. His taijutsu improved because of it, because after quite a lot of beatings, he ended up learning how to counterattack. Of course, it was impossible for him to hit a jounin like Anko, but she figured that against a genin, or even a low-level chunin, the boy was adequate enough. Lastly, his chakra control improved because on occasions, Anko would take the fight to the trees and on top of the water, forcing Naruto to use his control while dodging senbons and shurikens. It was precisely this way how he even learned how to do water walking. If he didn't learn, then Anko would use him as target practice for the rest of the day. That being said, unless Naruto wanted his body full of holes, he forced his control to improve by going up and down the trees multiple times until he had adequate control to attempt water walking. When the afternoon began, the two went, actually Naruto did, and Anko just waited, hunting for food. Anko even had the audacity of sending him inside the forest of death just so that he could grab a nice juicy steak for her. She expected for Naruto to encounter some dangerous creatures like a gigantic tarantula or a snake. The woman was surprised when Naruto appeared unscathed, as well as 20 clones, carrying a 500-pound wild pig for her. The poor animal had kunai holes all over his body. After lunch, it was time for ninjutsu. Anko believed that before Naruto even attempted the higher level jutsus and even wind manipulation, he needed to master the genin level techniques. Naruto actually protested against it, but he was quickly convinced once the jounin took some kunais from her holster and smiled deviously at him. Throughout the entire field, they've gathered a lot of wood and rocks for Naruto to use as replacements without even blinking. At first, he was rather slow, but with time, Naruto managed to increase the pace, probably from fear of being Anko's target practice. The Kawarimi may be considered an E-rank ninjutsu, but it was perhaps the best jutsu used when physically evading something is impossible. Eventually, Naruto saw merit in learning it. The Bunshin jutsu was almost impossible, so Anko didn't even bother with it. Naruto had way too much chakra for that to work. It didn't matter, because he had the Kage Bunshin to use. Said training took 4 to 5 hours before Anko moved on to wind manipulation. Since it took a great deal of concentration, she just left him alone for that time. She got Naruto a scroll on basic wind manipulation and even a couple jutsus for him to use if he even manages the first step down. It consisted of slicing a leaf in half using the boy's chakra. 1 week into it, and nothing much happened in that regard. Other than a small dent from the left side, nothing happened, and an entire week had passed. Anko knew, though, that the genin would persevere. As the training progressed, much to Anko's surprise, Naruto rarely complained, if ever at all, when Samamba would already quit and return to their boring chunin or even jounin days. Of course, she wouldn't tell him that because it would be complacent on her part. After the first week was done, she was proud to say that Naruto's training was going well. His chakra control was much better than before. His taijutsu improved severely compared to that style he used before. One thing that Kakashi's training or lack thereof, never seemed to bother changing. Now, she smiled and could honestly attest some difficulty at hitting the brat. His form improved, as well as his agility. It was actually very impressive before for a genin, but now it can be considered chunin level. Out of 100 senbons she threw at him in 2 hours, she missed the impressive amount of 90 senbons. What was more impressive was that he used his kunai to deflect the other 10. But none of this was enough to beat Niji, and not once did she miss the opportunity to tell him that. Still, the brat was relentless with his training. When the second week came, Anko increased the pace of his training as she constantly beat him more thoroughly and used her shurikens more accurately than before. Still, Naruto didn't complain, so she pushed forward. The brat would always demand more, and, very rarely, he succumbed to unconsciousness. During one of their fights, Naruto managed to use the Kawarimi so effectively that he managed to sneak behind his teacher and sent a horde of shuriken at her. Anko was so surprised that she nearly received all of them. It was so fast and so unpredictable in her mind. With a quick use of a kunai, she deflected them all. When she saw the smirk on his face, Anko felt compelled to smile, as well. The rate in which his skills were advancing was ridiculous. And to tell the truth, she wanted to see his limit. She wanted to see how much he could grow under her care. She wanted to see him kicking everyone's ass at the exams. That's why, when the second week ended, she made a single kage bunshin and sent it back to the village for a small gift. Anko attested to Naruto as a close-ranged fighter, so why not give him something in that regard? The clone came back with a scroll and gave it to the real one while she saw Naruto focusing on the leaf slicing exercise. She could see that the leaf was almost 100% sliced, so Naruto was good as done for the exams in terms of wind manipulation. Naruto, that's enough for today, come here. The order came out as strange to the blonde based on his experience so far, so he looked at her, waiting for a trap of some kind. Anko actually smirked at his response. At least, he was beginning to use his head more, as well. What is it, Anko-sensei? The moon isn't up yet. Why are you telling me to stop? The blonde approached his sensei and took a seat in front of her. She looked at her student for a while. His body was hurting all over. His clothes were ragged and burned. For all intents and purposes, Naruto was a mess and wouldn't be able to do half the things he had done so far. Anko took the small fact that Naruto healed fast and used it to harden his muscles and reflexes. Through that much pain, he could now have a better understanding in a fight and dodge evade instead of only blocking, like he did at the beginning. As I said before, you're a close-ranged fighter, and Niji is one, as well. So, I've decided to give you an advantage, here you go. Naruto took the scroll from Anko's hand and unsealed its content before a kadashi appeared on his right hand. Its design was simple and black in color, but Naruto couldn't take his eyes off it. He noticed that the hilt was barely big enough for him to use both hands, and he looked at Anko for an explanation. She didn't say anything and ushered him to release the sword from the scabbard and hold it in a reverse grip sort of way. It would be the style of Kenjutsu that he would learn for the duration of 1 week. Naruto noticed that the hilt was smaller so that the metal could be longer in compensation. You are to treat this sword as if it were your own limbs, Naruto. Also, it will serve to hone your skills in wind manipulation. This sword is made with chakra conductive metal. Try focusing chakra through it and you'll see what I mean. Doing as he was told, Naruto focused chakra throughout the sword and saw how the blue energy circled around the metal. Naruto saw that Anko came closer and dropped a baseball-sized rock towards the chakra-enhanced sword. When the rock reached the sword's position, Naruto was surprised that the sword sliced the rock clean in 2 pieces. The 2 pieces of the stone were now on the ground as he looked at Anko with a confident smile on his face. He knew that every time he smiled like that, Anko would make sure to wipe it off his face, but this time he would risk it gladly. After all, it was the first time anyone has given him a gift, besides the Sandaime Hokage. You know what happens to you when you smile like that, right, brat? Anko was already cracking her knuckles, but Naruto never lost a smile off his face. I know, but I'm too happy right now to care what will happen to me. This is perhaps the best gift someone gave me. I wanted to express how happy I am right now. Anko smiled at the brat and stood down from her threat. Normally, it wouldn't bode well for an instructor to get complacent with his or her student. But just this once, she would give him some time off. Okay, brat, you've earned some time off. But starting tomorrow, you'll work double of what you're doing right now, you got it? Yes, Anko-sensei. Naruto promptly saluted his sensei. Even if Anko had told him to lay low for the day, Naruto was too ecstatic with his new gift and decided to use it as much as possible. It was entirely Anko's fault, since she slipped the information that using a weapon to focus wind chakra on ended up decreasing the time needed to achieve proficiency in wind manipulation. The sensei didn't try to persuade him against it because of this same reason. If Naruto managed to finish the leaf slicing exercise quicker, they could move on to the jutsus that she intended him to learn within the weeks of training for the exams. Kenjutsu lessons wouldn't start for a while, as first Naruto needed to get accustomed to the blade into his hand. Anko would afterward show him the moves, and then they would begin the slow-motion spars. It took approximately 3 hours for Naruto to let go of the sword for the day before he approached his sensei and took a seat. The smile of satisfaction was still on him. "I wouldn't know the sword alone would make you this happy?" The question awoke Naruto from his inner musings. "It's not that I mean, the sword is the greatest. But it's something else." When Anko ushered him to explain, he continued. "I've been a genin for quite some time now, but I've never realized how much further I could go before I started training with you, Anko-sensei. Kakashi-sensei is nice and all, but in all honesty, he didn't focus much on me other than teaching the tree walking exercise and some sparse lessons in jutsu. What I mean to say is that I've learned more from you in 2 weeks than in 4 months from Kakashi-sensei. I just wanted to say thank you, not only for the sword, but for the training as well." Anko suddenly smirked at the blonde. "If getting beat up every time is what you're thankful for, you're welcome, brat." Both smiled at the interaction while eating some ration bars for dinner. "Anko-sensei, do you think I could learn Kusome Wind Jutsus now that I finished the leaf exercise?" The sensei snorted at the comment. "As far as I'm concerned, you're still due to finish." Anko stopped once she saw Naruto gathering a leaf from the ground and slicing it clean out of a sudden. "The sword? Yeah. I just visualized the sword infused with my chakra and applied it to the leaf. Not bad, huh?" Anko smiled and then gave Naruto a scroll containing 2 wind jutsus for him to learn, starting tomorrow. They were considered C-ranked and mostly supplementary techniques, but it would add nicely to Naruto's way of fighting. Both the Repushu, Gale Wind Palm technique, and the Datapa, Great Breakthrough, would increase his odds in a fight. Taking Naruto's fast use of the Kawarimi in conjunction with these 2 techniques, the brat finally had a way to beat Neji, though the Byakugan couldn't be fooled in terms of attacking from behind. The genin was finally collecting the fruits from his hard work, but Anko would rather kill herself than to become lenient on the kid. Kami knows he's this way because of her brutal methods. "Okay, brat, get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll increase the pace of your training. We'll have 1 more week to train, and the next one, we'll take our time and study your opponents. Is it really necessary? I could train some more." Hokage-sama warned her about the brat's preference, and on some level, she would accept Naruto's logic. But a Chunin needed more than just skills. "We already covered enough ground, and we'll cover even more this next week. Information on the battlefield is what actually wins battles, Naruto. Chunins are leaders, hence why before acting, they must gather as much information as possible on the enemy. Quite certainly, the judges will take your strategy into account as much as they'll take your skills. Can you tell me why a strong shinobi, whose only strategy is to beat an enemy using brute force, could never become a Chunin?" Naruto thought for a while taking what Anko had said into account. "It's because he lacks strategy?" Although innocent, Naruto answered correctly. "That's precisely why. One advantage your opponents have is that they have had a better education since they belong to shinobi clans with great resources. Nara, Hyuga, Uchiha, Aburam, all of them will come to the tournament prepared, both physically and mentally, and so should you. Seriously, brat, I won't have my student lose to an enemy, say Neji, because he forgot about the Hyuga's Byakugan, or to Shikamaru, if you forget about his clan's special abilities to control shadows. All of this knowledge will have to be taken into account at the tournament. Now, we'll focus on that part closer to the end of the month. And you're right about getting some extra training, so we'll take only the 3 last days for the information department, okay? Now get some sleep, will you?" Naruto saluted the woman once more and closed his eyes right there by the fire. Anko smirked at the brat and was about to do the same when she sensed someone approaching from behind. Taking a kunai, she almost threw the projectile at the man before the silver hair and the blue mask threw her off. The sudden appearance of Kakashi surprised Anko, as she thought that the man was training Sasuke far away from here. The fact that he walked in with one hand inside his pocket and one busy holding an orange book gave Anko the indication that the Kakashi in front of her was the real scarecrow Jounin. For all intents and purposes, it could very well be Orochimaru or someone under his command trying to use Naruto once more. She also knew that Kakashi wouldn't risk leaving Sasuke by himself, so the one in front of her must be a cage bunshin. Are you a clone or the original? The man just smiled at her before looking at the sleeping form of his student. Anko saw it and answered his silent question. He's doing great, if you must know, however something's been bugging me since the training started. It's actually good that you're here, because I couldn't just leave this place and warn Hokage-sama. Please come here and take a look at Naruto's exposed neck and tell me what you see. The clone did, as requested, before his eye widened to impossible proportions. Although it was different from Sasuke and even Anko's seal design, he knew it to be one of Orochimaru's creations indeed. So Naruto was also branded with the cursed seal. However, where Sasuke was terribly affected by it, Naruto didn't seem to be. Did he manifest its power during training? Anko negated that statement with a simple shake of the head. Not once so far, even though I pushed the brat more than I pushed Junior Anbu. If anger was the catalyst, then this brat is a saint. Also, I'm quite curious as to the red color instead of the usual black one I carry. Kakashi took another look at the seal and got curious as well. Sasuke's was black as well. I wonder why he hasn't said anything either to me. You were the Hokage. Perhaps he is hiding it, but for what reason? Kakashi voiced his thoughts for a while before turning to Anko. Will you confront him about it? I actually don't know what to do in that regard or if I need to do anything at all. If he hasn't used it so far, it is because he doesn't like to rely on it. I was hoping you could ask Hokage-sama for me. The Kakashi clone nodded before focusing on other aspects. He focused on Naruto's ragged clothes and the number of bruises on his skin. He figured that Anko would push him hard, but perhaps she was going overboard. Nevertheless, he supposed that Anko knew what she was doing, hence he chose not to comment about the brat's training. It was best that Kakashi didn't know as well, since he was training Sasuke, one of Naruto's opponents at the exams. He would consult the Hokage about it. Hopefully, he would shed some light about what to do concerning Naruto. I'll talk to him about it. I'm pretty sure he'll ask Jiraiya to take a look at the other seal to see what happened to Naruto. If that occurs, expect his visit sometime during next week. The clone smiled at Anko before dispelling in order to send information to the original Kakashi. Mountainous region of Fire Country. Immediately after the clone was dispelled, the real Kakashi flinched at the received information. Branding Sasuke with the cursed seal was pretty low for Orochimaru, but branding Naruto was even worse. Orochimaru must have figured that whatever happened, as a consequence, would be to his advantage. If the Kyuubi was released as a result of the cursed seal, then Konoha would be destroyed, hence his plan was accomplished. If not, then he managed to place a part of him inside of Naruto and is working from the inside in order to gain himself more chakra than any thought possible. Indeed, Orochimaru was dangerous, but tempering with something as powerful as the Kyuubi was beyond nuts in his opinion. Summoning another cage bunshin, he sent the clone towards the Hokage's office, as he knew the man would be working at this late hour. Kakashi just wondered what the leader would do concerning Naruto. His Jinchuriki status was sensitive enough, and now he was also branded with the cursed seal. It became a more troublesome situation than he ever thought it would be. At the Hokage's office, the Hokage was busy going through some reports when a knock was heard at the door. He was surprised to see Kakashi entering before he smiled. Kakashi wouldn't risk leaving Sasuke alone because of Orochimaru. I assume you have urgent news to discuss, since you've sent a clone here at such a late hour? Anko has confided me with some rather interesting news about Naruto. From what I could see, Orochimaru branded him with the cursed seal as well. The Hokage was reading a report while listening to the Jounin, but Kakashi could very well see that his attention wasn't on the report anymore. Why would it, actually? It's not every day you find out that your own student isn't only experimenting on humans, but with demons as well, especially one who could level an entire village with just a swing of its tails. Is it the same as Sasuke's? Why didn't it manifest yet like Sasuke's? It's not the same, although I'm only speaking about its design. I don't have the skills to tell the difference. Grabbing a blank piece of paper from the desk, Kakashi showed the Hokage Naruto's seal. It's red, though, instead of black. I don't know much about it either. Let's hope that Jiraiya is in the neighborhood to take a look at it before the finals. Please tell Anko to avoid doing anything that could temper with both seals. I will contact that pervert. At training ground number 43. Okay, I'll do, as he said. Thanks. Kakashi the clone nodded before vanishing once more. Upon looking at Naruto's seal once more, Anko unconsciously rubbed hers as well. She hated her old sensei so much, so she took it upon herself to deal with the man. However, now not only Anko, but Naruto and Sasuke share the same fate. Naruto was perhaps the most sensitive case because he housed the Kyuubi inside of him. If anything damaged the Yondame's seal, the beast would get out and destroy everything in its path. All because that bastard wanted power. Right now, it is useless to dwell on such thoughts. It was best to train Naruto to the best of her abilities so that when the time came, he could deal with Konoha's enemies. Next day. The sun barely appeared and two ninjas were already going at each other with vigor. Naruto knew that Anko would step up his training, but he was able to sense a sudden increase in Anko's temper that he never saw before. It appeared as if the woman really wanted to harm him rather than train him. Nevertheless, he figured that by evading this new Anko and even landing a few hits would certify him against tougher opponents at the exams like Neji. If he could cover his own ass against a Jounin, then dealing with Neji would be a piece of cake. Naruto blocked an incoming kick that would aim his head before performing a quick kawarimi to appear behind her. However, Anko already knew this move and quite surprisingly unleashed a great load of snakes at the boy. Upon seeing the snakes coming from inside her sleeves, Naruto was surprised as hell. However, he managed to use another replacement technique and appeared to her side with a kunai on his hand. Anko just turned and performed some hand seals before gathering air inside her lungs. She exhaled a gigantic fireball at him. Naruto quickly sent a cage bunshin in front of him as he dodged the fireball's path. The blonde was right next to Anko with the intention of kicking her, but Anko smirked at his attempt and grabbed a couple of shurikens. The genin knew that Anko wouldn't hesitate with those shurikens, hence why he jumped backwards and stuck himself to the behind him before throwing some kunes at his sensei. The woman deflected Naruto's projectiles with her shurikens but did nothing afterward, which confused Naruto greatly. It was sheer reflex that Naruto jumped roughly to the side and avoided another projectile assault. As he looked at the one who attacked him from behind, he noticed that it was his sensei. The one to whom he was fighting had transformed into mud. Deciding to use his favorite jutsu, Naruto summoned 4 cage bunshins and sent them towards Anko. Anko expected the clones to attack her without any sort of coordination, however she quickly saw that they were a reflection of the original. So, it took her some time to deal with them, however it worked well for Naruto to vanish from sight and prepare something for her. As soon as the clones were dealt with, Naruto quickly appeared behind Anko and attacked her. Anko turned in time to see him and bent her body slightly, avoiding Naruto's sneak attack. She then landed a fierce kick on his stomach. The genin was sent flying towards the ground before landing hard on the ground. Anko dropped right in front of him and waited for her student to get up. "Get up, brat, I told you I'd increase the pace. You can do better than that, get up." Anko decided to provoke him further by landing a kick on his stomach, however when she landed, she was surprised to see that she kicked wood instead. And it wasn't a normal piece of wood, as it was covered with explosive tags. Anko snarled at the brat's sneakiness before summoning a quick Tsuchi Bunshin to escape the explosion. Naruto was smirking at his trap, but frowned once he saw Anko standing behind him with a smile on her face. He got ready for any kind of attack, but instead all he received were claps coming from his sensei. Naruto managed, with a few E-rank ninjutsu, to overcome a Jounin. She wouldn't be a good sensei if she didn't praise her students' good work. That was really nice, Naruto. Now, hit the water. It's time for a new exercise in chakra control I've been meaning to teach you. Naruto took some time to breathe and nodded at the order. After he stopped in the middle of the lake, Naruto's eyes widened to impossible proportions once he saw a baseball-sized rock coming right his way fast. He managed to dodge it, albeit barely. This way you can practice your chakra control at the same time as you practice your agility. Now if you don't want to get hit, you'll have to dodge, and I have my entire collection of rocks here to throw at you. Both Naruto and the Hokage, who was watching everything with his mystic ball, face-faulted at the overkill method of training, but only the Hokage had such luxury. Anko even summoned a cage bunshin and instead of one, two now threw rocks at Naruto. While seeing the brat dodging the rocks out of fear for his life, the Hokage was wondering if perhaps Anko was taking this a bit too hard on the boy. The man never heard of Anubis being trained like this. But, as the training progressed, the Hokage was amazed that Naruto was managing the exercise. He flinched once he saw that one nasty rock hit Naruto's stomach, which took the air away from him for a while. Anko at least waited until he was good enough to return and continued the assault. 2 hours later, Naruto was thanking the heavens that the exercise was over. Probably, the Hokage was, as well, but the genin wouldn't know. Now, we'll be stuck with wind manipulation and Kenjutsu, Naruto. You have 15 minutes to recover your energy and eat something. The boy just nodded and took a couple of ration bars from his pocket as he had time to ponder on what happened at the fight. He didn't know why, but immediately after the Bunshins were dealt with, Naruto saw the battle from an angle he had never been before. He also remembered seeing Anko punching him in the face when actually, she only kicked him. What was going on here, he asked. It shouldn't be possible for this to occur, or was he actually losing his mind due to this insane training? Is there something on your mind, brat? After Naruto explained, Anko took a while to stare at Naruto, as if what he said was nothing new. You're telling me you didn't know about the fact that a cage Bunshin transfers the information back to the original once dispelled? The look of pure question mark in front of her pretty answered the question. Anko was contemplating between beating him for it or beating herself for not using this knowledge to his best interest. Granted that any information the clone gathered could be transferred to the original, the genin could boost his chakra control and wind manipulation exercises, as well as new jutsus to master before the finals. Naruto, how many clones can you produce without tiring yourself out? Naruto moved to his thinking pose for a while. Well, I'd say 100 give or take. Why? Anko was practically laughing in excitement. Summon 100 and divide them in 3 groups. One will practice chakra control. The second will practice the leaf slicing exercise, and the rest will be attempting the jutsus. The more you can summon, the faster your learning rate will be. Naruto took a while to understand and nodded before summoning 100 copies of himself. He quickly divided them into groups, as per Anko's orders, before everyone began their part of the training. Anko was marveled at the sight of so much training just for one's benefit. What am I going to do with Anko-sensei? The question alerted Anko, and she turned to see the original. What shocked her was that instead of getting tired with all the chakra used for the cage Bunshins, Naruto was perfectly fine. Seriously, how much chakra does this kid possess? He wasn't even using the cursed seal or the fox's chakra. It was all his. Grab your sword, Naruto, it's time for you to learn the katas. So this was Naruto's routine for the entire week. From morning until noon, Naruto would fight with Anko with no restraints, not even with jutsus. In the afternoon, he would summon his clones for the chakra part and noon ninjutsu techniques while he practiced his kenjutsu katas. Anko would, on occasion, summon an Anbu training course and usher the genin to go through it a great number of times so that he could lower his time needed to go through the obstacles. And Naruto achieved some great timing on the obstacle course. Not Anbu level, though, but good enough to leave a lot of chunins behind. When the week was over, Anko decided to test the results of Naruto's training with the cage Bunshins. The results were nearly palpable, as his speed greatly increased, as well as the speed behind his techniques. The blonde managed to learn the 2 Fuitan jutsus and even adapted them to his routine. He would use Kawarimi to get behind the enemy and throw 2 shurikens before using the Repushu technique to impale the enemy. Anko only managed to dodge it by using the Tsuchi Bunshin technique. One last thing that she wanted Naruto to learn was the order of elements. As soon as he unleashed the Datapa technique on Anko, she used the Grand Fireball technique back at him. The fire technique was fueled by the wind technique and increased its size while maintaining his course at Naruto. Naruto, you've done great. Now, can you tell me why my technique overcame yours? Is it because you are stronger than me? Obviously true, but that's not the reason. In order to fight using elemental ninjutsu, you must know which element is stronger than which. Therefore, when you face someone with a stronger element than yours, you can use other attacks. Remember the sequence. Fire beats wind. Wind beats lightning. Lightning beats earth. Earth beats water. Water beats fire. If you realize that, you will know if you have the advantage in element or not. Plus, being a wind user, means your body is more vulnerable to fire attacks. This is important, so you must understand. If, for instance, you fight against Sasuke or any enemy with fire as his main element, don't ride a block or use wind attacks, you'll just increase your odds of defeat and even your death. Do you understand? When Anko used the word death, Naruto understood the importance of knowing. He took a while, but he understood. The sequence was easy to memorize, and the same concept applied to his body, so he understood. I understand, Anko-sensei, just watch out for fire users, and I will be fine. Fire is your worst enemy indeed, but do watch out for other elements as well. They may not deal as much damage as fire, but they do cause damage nonetheless. Now, I believe it's high time you earned yourself a bigger break of 2 days. You can thank your cage buncheons for that. However, I expect you to return here at 0800 hours for a small recap of things before we proceed with the information gathering department. You can do whatever you want, brat. Just don't overexert yourself too much. Naruto bowed to his sensei before walking towards the village. His clothes were a mess, and it would be better if he simply threw it away. Anko wished the boy would get over it and appear inside a ninja clothing store, but she wouldn't push him to do it. After all, it would be quite hypocritical of her to say bad things about his taste in clothing. With the rest of the time free, she supposed it was high time she focused on her hobby, torturing criminals. With Naruto. As the blonde walked throughout the village towards his apartment, he was receiving all kinds of stares. He didn't know that they were staring at his clothes, or rather the lack of it, so he just ignored them as he reached his apartment. Once inside, Naruto went for a quick shower in order to clean some of the bruises and sweat gathered from 3 weeks of never-ending training. He threw his clothes on the garbage after placing his sword on top of his bed and frowned since he knew that that was his last piece of clothing available. Right now, the only one he had to wear was a clean pair of black pants and an orange t-shirt. The reason he used the orange jumpsuit so much was because it was his first gift ever, supplied by the Sandaime. Naruto remembered the day because it was the happiest day of his life. Now, it was all ruined. Even if it was for a good cause, Naruto still felt remorse for losing everything. Looking outside, Naruto realized that he just couldn't pass the exams without a proper outfit. The one he had wasn't damage resilient. Releasing a long sigh, Naruto grabbed his toad-looking wallet and took his gathered money inside one of the pockets and left his apartment towards a nice store where he could purchase some new clothes. As he walked, he realized that he had 2 major problems. 1, he knew that many stores wouldn't sell anything to him because of the damn fox. The second reason was his lack of knowledge on what clothes to buy. He knew he liked the color orange, but aside from that, he didn't know much else. He needed assistance in that regard, however he didn't know anyone who could help him. Sakura would be a considerable choice, but Naruto didn't feel like looking at the entire village for her. Unfortunately, he was stuck with the choice of going inside store after store until someone decides to attend him with the regular prices. When he left the 4th store, the blonde was already giving up, actually thinking about asking Anko when he returned from his vacation. He was walking back to his apartment when he noticed a smaller shop located on his right. Naruto could remember every single shop he had been to in Konoha, but he never entered this one. Who knows, maybe the owner doesn't treat him like crap. As soon as he entered, he saw that the store was practically empty of customers. However, it was quite packed with ninja tools and clothing. Looking around a bit, Naruto stopped once he found the cashier's table with a person snoring. He didn't know if it was a boy or a girl because of the hair. As he approached the attendant's position, he saw the Chinese-style dress and instantly remembered her from the Chunin exams. Now, what was her name again? It started with a T, and he was quite sure an E and an N followed. 10 something? He scratched his head in order to remember, but he did eventually. Tenten said. Girl slowly opened her eyes, a little bit perturbed that someone woke her. She was about to scream at her father for rudely awakening her when she remembered that the voice didn't belong to him. With her sight coming back, she could see that kid Naruto staring at her. But he was wearing something different. It's you, Naruto. What's with the change in clothes? Last time I saw you, you were wearing that hideous jumpsuit. Naruto wasn't thrilled to hear Tenten's comments about his clothes, but he ignored it. Yes, I ruined the training. Do you work here, Tenten? The rather dumb question could be easily just as rudely answered by Tenten, but she figured that Naruto was here as a customer instead of looking for her. Yes, I do. This is my father's shop. Naruto, upon hearing that, knew that he hit the jackpot. Tenten wouldn't treat him badly and wouldn't overprice him because she didn't know about his status as a Jinchuriki. Cool, I was hoping that I could find some new clothes for me, could you help me choose? Tenten let out a big yawn at the prospect of helping someone to choose an outfit from scratch, but a customer was a customer. Sure, I can help you. What colors are you thinking about using? She visibly sighed once Naruto stopped and began to think about his choice for color. It was getting pretty late and he came in here without even thinking what he wanted in the first place. Well, I always enjoyed the color orange, but it doesn't need to be the central color, right? Maybe black or dark blue with some orange aspects would be nice. Do you have something like that? Also, I'm not that interested in long sleeves anymore, so pants and a t-shirt are fine. Tenten sighed once more, but went towards the clothes department to select some items according to Naruto's preference. She actually was hoping that he didn't choose orange as his main color because first it wouldn't be ninja-like and second, she would have to turn him down because quite certainly, her father wouldn't even consider using orange for his items. Now, if the choosing was left for her, she would go for black instead of blue. It mingled better with the ninja's shadow as far as stealth was concerned. After selecting both more black than blue outfits, she showed them to Naruto, who then began to observe the items. Well, I guess from your picks, you think that black is more suited, huh Tenten? She would respond with a duh, but she just nodded and explained. Black is more suitable for stealth, and you already have an orange and dark blue combination. Here this combination is nice, plus the fabric is resilient to physical damage and even kunais or shurikens. Naruto did concur with Tenten's assessment, as the combination was quite interesting. It consisted of black Anbu-style pants with some orange stripes located on the thighs region, followed by a black polo shirt with small orange lines on the stomach. It had a zipper instead of buttons. Tenten even complemented the outfit with some fishnet clothing to go under the polo shirt and a pair of black sandals, to which Naruto concurred as well. I liked it Tenten, could you perhaps engrave an orange spiral seal on the shirt's back? Tenten nodded and started taking Naruto's measurements for the clothes manufacturing. She only had a showroom, not a stock of piled clothes. How many do you want, Naruto? The blonde looked at her and then took the money he saved from his missions. How much can I afford with this much? 2, 3 Tenten frowned at the blonde's lack of tact as far as business was concerned, but counted the money anyway. Naruto was expecting to buy at least 2 because that's the price that everyone charged him. When Tenten told him a much higher number, he thought she was on crack or something. 7 sets in other shops would cost at least 3 times his saved amount. The surprise only took about 2 seconds before he realized that Tenten's shop was perhaps the only one, besides the ramen shop, which didn't overprice him. I only need 3 for now, thanks Tenten. Well, you have money for more if you wish. Perhaps a nice set of kunais and shurikens? We just received a new shipment, and they are top-notch. I can give you 1 set of each, and you still have change. Now, Naruto was hallucinating. But like before, Tenten's shop sold him the regular price just like all the other shops would, if he wasn't who he was. Naruto accepted the new sets and gave Tenten the amount needed for the purchase. You can come back in about 2 days, Naruto. Everything will be ready by then. Here is your receipt. Naruto never knew it would be this easy, as he left the store with a huge smile on his face. Perhaps, he found the store he was looking for all along. 2 days later. When his little vacation was over, Naruto was up and ready at 7 o'clock as he casually walked through the empty streets of Konohagakure. The precious few that enjoyed early mornings were there as well with him, but for some reason, none of them spared him any glances, which was surprising, seeing, as 2 days ago, these very civilians shot glares at him back then. He wondered if they didn't recognize him because of the new clothes, and if that was true, then perhaps the orange jumpsuit was a dead giveaway. Nevertheless, it wasn't something to dwell on, as right now, he was supposed to finish his training under Anko-sensei. As he walked towards the training ground, Naruto wondered what would happen to him if Anko wasn't around. The woman had the most sadistic personality he'd ever seen, but he couldn't deny how much she helped him to improve. Perhaps, if someone else was to tutor him for the exams, Naruto wouldn't be as prepared as he was now. Taking his growth rate into consideration, the genin imagined how much stronger he would be if Anko was there, since he graduated from the academy. He didn't have anything against Kakashi-sensei, but on occasions, the man was too damn lazy for his liking, often choosing to let his team train on their own instead of actually training them. Such a way of training may work on Sasuke and Sakura because they had a nice basis of the shinobi world, either by clan knowledge or simple book smarts. Naruto wasn't like them. He only learned through practice. He preferred Anko's way of doing things easily. Too bad the woman wouldn't be around after the exams, though. Naruto arrived at the training ground in half an hour, hence he had another half an hour until Anko arrived. Or so he thought, as a great load of snakes appeared out of nowhere and attacked him. Sighing in dismay, Naruto grabbed his Kadashi and, focusing wind chakra through it, sliced the snakes in multiple pieces before jumping to the side as Anko appeared behind him with a kunai ready to impale him. Naruto didn't create much distance between her, though, which allowed him to engage against his sensei using his sword. Anko wasn't stupid to parry her kunai with Naruto's wind chakra Kadashi, hence why she used a simple kawarimi when Naruto attacked her. She appeared 20 meters to his right side before going through hand seals. Kaiten Gakakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Grand Fireball Technique. Quickly summoning 10 cage buncheons, Naruto used a kawarimi with the furthest clone and sent the others to attack. He remained behind while the buncheons dealt with Anko, or rather Anko dealt with the buncheons. After seeing the direction she was moving to attack, he threw a couple of shurikens at the position Anko was going to be. The woman was about to deflect the projectiles when she saw her mistake. As soon as she grabbed the kunai to deflect them, she saw the genin making some hand seals. Fueton Repushu, Wind Release, Gale Wind Palm Technique. The shurikens received the extra speed with grace as both of them impaled Anko right on her chest. Her body was replaced with mud. He stood his ground, waiting for the attack to come, but no one ever came. He turned and saw his sensei sitting on a gigantic stone eating some dango for breakfast. Naruto could see that the woman was enjoying every second of her favorite dish. Too bad she wasn't introduced to the world's best food, ramen. He slowly walked towards his sensei, a little bit perturbed about the fact that she was declaring her love to the food as it was part of a ritual. However, he realized that he did the same thing with his favorite dish. That's the welcome I receive, Anko-sensei. I was 30 minutes early for the meeting. The woman smiled sweetly at the kid before finishing her last piece of dango. Afterward, she jumped from the rock and stood right in front of her student. Wow, brat, I would never think you'd change your wardrobe so drastically. What happened? Naruto just looked at her as if she didn't remember that it was she who destroyed every cloth he possessed. I lost all of them in training, remember? So I went into this shop 2 days ago and bought these, pretty cool huh? The black arm braces were my idea. Naruto bought them when he returned to the store yesterday to pick up his clothes. Anko smiled and decided to check the boy over from head to toe. She took a while to size him up from the front before turning to the back. She knew that the boy enjoyed the color orange, and while it wasn't the best color to a ninja, he managed to pick a nice outfit. It was an extreme improvement from before, seeing as Naruto's old clothes weren't considered ninja-like at all. Also, like he said, the arm braces were a nice touch, especially considering that they could very well be used against Naruto's first opponent. When a Hyuga used their Gyuuken, one touch from them, and the opponent was dealt with. With the arm braces, Naruto could use them to block the Gyuuken strikes. Nice to see you using your brain, kid. Indeed, it's a nice outfit, although I'm pretty sure it wasn't you who picked it. Naruto frowned at the woman, which earned a couple seconds of laughter from Anko. Now, enough of that, I chose to test you that way to see your reflexes, which was good. You can never walk in anywhere, and don't expect retaliation. Now, on this last week, like I said, we'll be covering the information on your opponents. However, I decided to add something else. The last one of the shinobi arts, which I know you suck at, Genjutsu, or rather how to detect and dispel one. Despite the obvious jab to his skills, Naruto approved. It was his biggest weakness after all. Now, take a seat and tell me about what you know about Niji. The entire month of training passed by, and Naruto could say he detested only one part of it. Anko found that indeed the blonde lacked in the intellectual department a bit, as it took a while for him to understand the mechanics of the Dojutsu Byakugan, as well as others' abilities. In the end, though, Anko and Naruto managed to cover a great deal of knowledge of all the combatants, even the ones that Naruto wouldn't likely fight against, considering the results of each fight. Anko, at the end of the training, surmised that Naruto was as ready as he'll ever be for the third phase of the exams. Probably his strongest weakness would be his brashness, this being the only handicap she couldn't cure him of. With a Hyuga, attacking without an action plan was considered suicide and, thus, she spent an entire day reminding him of that. Right now, she couldn't do anything more for him, though. She hoped that the runt would perform well when the time came. One aspect that the judges take into consideration, more than anything, is the strategy. Strength and speed alone was no guarantee of promotion. Anko at least hoped that Naruto remembered that when facing the Hyuga, as well as the others. She knew what happened between her student and Hyuga Niji at the preliminaries, and she was afraid that Naruto would forget everything he learned thus far, choosing to rely on brute force instead of the strategy they came up with during their conversations. Well, she did what she could given the time frame, she reasoned. After meeting with the brat for the last time before the exams, she figured it was high time she filled the tank with dango and hot sake. Naruto, for his part, took his time thanking Anko for her immense help throughout the month before walking back to his apartment. He still had 2 days until the tournament, so he figured he would do nothing for the majority of the day, which was about to turn into night in a few minutes. It took him less than half an hour from the training ground towards his apartment. Quickly opening the door with a yawn, the blonde figured that it was high time he took a nice nap. He would have plenty of time to rest his body and restore his chakra capacity. Once he got inside the apartment, though, he sensed that something was wrong. 1. He remembered closing the only window in the room once he left, and 2. The lock didn't take nearly as long as it normally took to open. When he reached the living room, he was surprised to see a man sleeping on his couch. His appearance was kind of weird, Naruto reasoned. Even if the man was sleeping, Naruto wouldn't put it past him not to retaliate. The blonde placed his sword inches from the man's neck. "Oi, who are you, and what are you doing sleeping on my couch?" The noise awakened the man, who only opened his right eye and yawned some before getting up. "What took you so long to get here, brat? I've been waiting here for you for 3 hours now." Naruto's sweat dropped at the man's accusation. He never even met the old geezer before. "I don't even know you, old geezer, and you didn't answer my question." Jiraiya blinked at the blonde before figuring that an introduction was in order. "I'm Jiraiya of the Sannin, you brat. Hot kid these days, no respect. The reason I'm here is because I'm to escort you to the Hokage's office. Now come on, I don't have all day." Naruto, despite knowing something about the Sannins, didn't express the respect the elder man thought he would receive. Instead, Naruto just grumbled a few incoherent words and went to the bathroom to clean himself a bit. The perverted Sannin ended up being amused by the little genin's reaction and stood in the middle of the living room, contemplating everything around him. His sensei, the Sandaime Hokage, shared quite a lot of information with him about Naruto, including the month he trained with the Psycho Special Jounin Mitarashi Anko. What was most impressive was that the brat handled that much time with her. Most anbus wouldn't last more than 10 days. Soon Naruto exited the bathroom and was still complaining. "Okay, let's get this over with already. I was about to sleep right now." Jiraiya smirked once more and followed the blonde as they traveled through the rooftops towards the Hokage's office. With Sasuke going through hand seals, Uchiha Sasuke began focusing lightning chakra through his right hand as he looked at his target, a considerably sized rock with a giant hole in the middle. He was sweating profusely because of the amount of control needed for this ultimate technique, his sensei's creation. The Chidori was Sasuke's last item to cover throughout the 1 month of training. Kakashi was a few meters to his right and simply observed his student. Sasuke came a long way in terms of taijutsu, agility, and ninjutsu. He did inherit his clan's genius, as it didn't take him more than 10 minutes to learn a new jutsu and incorporate it into his strategy. Of course, the Sharingan had a lot to do with that. Kakashi wasn't against the idea of Sasuke using his eyes to learn, as he had one as well. It's not to say that Sasuke kept learning one ninjutsu after another. He asked Kakashi to teach him only lightning-based jutsus, as it was his other affinity along with fire. Aside from ninjutsu, Sasuke sparred a lot with Kakashi, both with and without his Sharingan. Kakashi, not once, needed to use his Sharingan, but that didn't mean that Sasuke's skill didn't improve. It just meant to prove that Kakashi wouldn't need to use it against a genin, even if it's an Uchiha. Right now, Sasuke managed to collect the required energy and concentration for the Chidori and charged at the rock with impressive speed before carving a similar hole next to the other one. The boy kneeled on the ground soon afterward, panting. "It appears that 2 is your limit, huh, Sasuke?" Kakashi said, earning a nod from the Uchiha. "At least without the cursed seal, that is." Kakashi admitted not enjoying the time when Sasuke trained with the cursed seal. It gave the Uchiha more power, more chakra, and more speed, but it wasn't natural in his book. He hoped that the Hokage knew what he was doing, letting Sasuke use the cursed seal. The Uchiha just took a seat where he stood. Today was his last day, as well, and he figured that he was ready for the exams. Sabaku no Gaara was a strong foe from what he saw at the preliminaries, but he believed that his speed was enough to overcome that ultimate defense of his. After defeating Gaara, his next opponent would be the winner of the first fight between Naruto and Hyuga Neji. It has been an entire month since Sasuke last saw his teammate, and he actually wondered how much stronger the doe became under that woman's guidance. Kakashi told him that he paid a visit to Naruto once and saw him almost beaten to death. When questioned about it, Kakashi briefly explained Anko's methods and how it probably was more effective to Naruto than a teacher boring him with long theories. Sasuke ended up agreeing with said logic, as he knew Naruto would be bored with any sort of explanation that took longer than 30 seconds. So it appears that our time is up, huh? Sasuke said, earning a nod from Kakashi. It also worked well, since Kakashi had an appointment with the Hokage. He wasn't bothered by the fact that the meeting had started half an hour ago. At the Hokage's office. Inside the Hokage's office, 3 individuals were seriously considering what would happen if Kakashi were to suddenly disappear for a while. All 3 of them considered different type of tortures for the scarecrow Jounin. Well, 2 of them, because Naruto actually settled for a nice nap on the ground instead. He was pretty tired upon arriving home, and knowing his sensei, he realized that it would take at least another hour for him to show up. Suddenly, a smoke appeared in the room, waking Naruto up. First he was dragged to this meeting, only later being informed that nothing would happen until Kakashi arrived, which would be close to 2 hours from now. Naruto even tried sleeping, and Kakashi once more took that away from him by showing up only half an hour late instead of the usual 2 hours. Yo, sorry I was late. Sasuke decided to play with poison and had to be taken to the hospital for treatment. No one emitted a single noise in the room, and it was clear that no one believed that to be true. Using your students as an excuse was low, Kakashi, really low. The Hokage surmised, as he had yet to hear this type of excuse from Kakashi. Kakashi merely smiled at that before the meeting started. It actually took a while for Hiruzen, Jiraiya, and Naruto to stop picturing a nice session of torture for the Jounin. After that was done, the 3 eldest in the room started discussing some trivial things about the village's security, and Naruto just kept listening with plain boredom. His eyes were almost shutting once more, as he couldn't believe that someone would drag him into a meeting he wouldn't even be a part of. Suddenly, though, his patience was at an end. He wanted to sleep, goddammit, not listen to them talking between each other. Excuse me, Hokage Jiji, but can I go now? I don't know why I was summoned here. Naruto said, earning the attention of everyone in the room. My apologies, Naruto. No, you can't. I'm afraid. We just want to know one thing from you, Naruto nodded, ushering the Hokage to continue. It has come to my knowledge that something happened between you and Orochimaru at the second stage of the Chunin exams. I only wish to know why you haven't approached me showing the red seal imprinted on your neck. Naruto looked around nervously to the 3 elder individuals and sighed, wondering how they figured it out. Perhaps Anko spotted it and told them about it. He figured that telling any other story besides the truth wouldn't help ease the situation, so he told everything, beginning from the part when he was bitten, as well as the conversation he had with the fox. Along the way, all 3 were surprised upon hearing that it was due to Kyuubi's interference that the seal became red instead of the usual black color. When he finished the explanation, he realized that their faces changed from the beginning of the meeting. He was screwed, and he knew it. Even the Hokage was showing an angered face he had never seen before. Truth be told, the Hokage wasn't mad at Naruto, except for the fact that the genin didn't consider reporting this incident. Whom he was truly mad at was his ex-student, as well as the damn beast that resided within Naruto's stomach. One gave the other more juice to pump in Naruto's chakra supply. Too much power could bring unforeseen consequences, and for what? An empty desire for revenge, perhaps. As far as the fox was concerned, wanting more power was no shock to the old Hokage. It's not like the beast ever changed its mindset. Now, he would have to deal with this threat accordingly, if not both Naruto and Sasuke could become trouble for Konohagakure. Quickly producing his pipe, the Hokage gave a few puffs before looking at the blonde. First of all, Naruto, the only reason I'm mad with you is the fact that you hadn't told me or anyone about what happened. Besides that, nothing more. I will extend the same courtesy that Sasuke received and allow you to use the cursed seal. However, you must use this power to protect the village or your comrades, never for personal gains. Naruto kept looking at the old man for a while before smiling. Don't sweat it, Hokage Jiji. I don't enjoy using it, as I told the damn fur ball. I will only resort to it if necessary. You have my word. The Hokage smiled before turning to Jiraiya. Naruto, as you've been properly introduced, is Jiraiya, a member of the Sannin and our village's most skilled seal master. I called him here so that he could take a look at your other seal. The blonde nodded before he was asked to lift his shirt and focus a bit of chakra. Jiraiya kneeled in front of him and analyzed the seal that was responsible for keeping the fox caged. He started emitting a grave noise as if he had found something that piqued his interest. Naruto saw it and immediately became preoccupied. He immediately asked what was wrong, but Jiraiya just continued with the same noise as before, looking at the brat's face and then looking back at the seal before emitting the same noise one more time. By now, Naruto was starting to picture the worst-case scenario based on Jiraiya's answers or lack thereof. Suddenly, the perverted Sannin got up and with a huge smile on his face announced his verdict. Nothing wrong, brat, the seal is as good as it always has been. All of them ignored Naruto, who was screaming obscenities at the Sannin for worrying him. Now, I was meaning to ask you something, brat, care to join me for some ramen? The word managed to quiet the kid down and he eagerly nodded before both left the office towards the best ramen place in Konoha. At Ichiraku's. Naruto asked Jiraiya as he watched the blonde finish his fourth bowl and begin the fifth. Do you feel prepared for the Chunin tournament in 2 days? You betcha. Anko-sensei has taught me a lot and I will kick everyone's ass, believe it. Naruto even punched the air before resuming the task of finishing bowl after bowl of ramen. I can see that, and did she ever mention anything about summons to you? Jiraiya asked before Naruto showed his long thinking pose. I guess not. Well, I'd like to show you something. Are you finished? The pervert couldn't take his eyes off the pile of bowls that rested in front of him. It had to be the Kyuubi somehow. No human being could eat 20 bowls of ramen like that. The pervert now understood why the owners of the tent were so happy to see Naruto. With him alone, they could sell an entire day's worth of meals and earn a great profit. Quickly paying the bill, he and Naruto left towards one of the training grounds. None of them turned to see Tucci and AM grinning from ear to ear at the fact that they've actually sold the equivalent of an entire week's supply of their product. One of the training grounds. After a bit of walking, Naruto and Jiraiya stopped near a small water stream, which happened to be one of Konoha's many training grounds. Okay, brat. Now that we're here, I want to talk to you about a jutsu called Kuchiyus no Jutsu, summoning technique. To Naruto's confused face, Jiraiya began the explanation. Kuchiyus no Jutsu is a space-time ninjutsu that allows a ninja to call upon animals to fight with him or her. A few things are required for such a technique, such as a great amount of chakra, a signed contract, and a few drops of blood. Here, let me show you what it is. Jiraiya said, before biting his thumb and moving his hands to form the needed hand seals. He then slammed his hand on the ground before smoke surrounded him and Naruto. Suddenly, right in front of Naruto, appeared a horse-sized toad and Jiraiya was seated on top of it. I, for instance, have a contract with the toads and I can call upon them to aid me if need arises. Would you like to summon them as well, kid? Naruto looked at the toad in front of him and started drooling for a while at the prospect of being able to do something like that. However, something in his mind clicked and he remembered Anko's teachings. Why are you giving me this jutsu just like that? We've only met like 2 hours ago? Jiraiya was obviously surprised by the suspicious question. Surely, he thought that the kid would be ecstatic to learn new stuff. He guessed that Anko must have drilled some important knowledge in his head. It is considered a great honor to be able to summon the toads. The Hokage felt it was wise to give it to you, and I concur with him. He asked me this favor, and I intend to honor it. Now, before anything, you'll have to sign your name into this contract. As soon as the words left Jiraiya's mouth, the toad extended his tongue towards Naruto and handed him the contract. While the blonde was studying the scroll a bit, Jiraiya smiled seeing as Naruto stopped asking questions about why he was being allowed to sign the toad contract, one which was only signed by 2 people so far. And he never said which Hokage asked him, so Naruto must have thought it was the Sandaime. As soon as Naruto opened the scroll, he saw only 2 names written and opened his eyes wide at the mention of the second name. The Yondaime Hokage was his hero and role model ever since he started the academy, and now he would learn a technique that was used by him as well. Biting his thumb, Naruto wrote his name on the 3rd column next to Yondaime's name before the scroll wrapped itself and was collected by the toad, which then vanished in thin air. Jiraiya then approached Naruto's position and quickly taught him the hand seals needed for the jutsu. To his great surprise, Naruto caught the sequence quite quickly and gave his first try. As soon as he slammed his hand on the ground, he saw the gathered smoke and smiled in anticipation. To Jiraiya's shocked expression appeared a battle toad the same size as the red one which appeared with the contract. This toad had black samurai armor and 2 swords strapped on his back. If his smile, or lack thereof, was any indication, the toad wasn't friendly. The toad in question looked around and spotted Jiraiya. "Jiraiya-sama, what can I do to assist? My name is Gamut Tsurugi." The perverted Sannin placed both hands on each side of his waist and smiled. "Nice to meet you, Game Tsurugi-san, but it wasn't me who summoned you. It was the blonde kid behind you." The toad in question turned and looked at the brat who was looking at him. It took a couple of seconds to realize that the kid was actually looking at his swords. "So, I gather that you are the toad's new summoner, then. And you appreciate my swords. I must say yours is impressive as well, kid. I always enjoy a nice kenjutsu practice, and I believe this is as good a test as any." Gamut Tsurugi took one of his swords and waited for Naruto to take his. "Normally, the test would be conducted by Gamabunta-sama, but I believe myself to be worthy enough of said honor as well. If you manage to hold your own in a battle against me, kid, then you have the right to summon our kind anytime." Naruto nodded, and with a smile, he grabbed his Kadashi and held it in a reverse grip in front of him, just like Anko had instructed. Jiraiya kneeled on the ground a few meters away from the two as he looked at the blonde. Jiraiya could see that Anko's training bore great fruits if Naruto's determined eyes were any indication. Also, from Naruto's file, brashness was one of his characteristics. Therefore, he was surprised to see that the kid was standing there studying his opponent instead of attacking right away. The toad nodded at Naruto's focus and decided to attack first. Even if the kid had fire in his eyes, the toad was considered the most skilled sword fighter of his homeland. There was no way the kid could hold on. Using his speed, Gamut Tsurugi appeared in front of Naruto and swung his sword aiming at Naruto's shoulder. The noise of metal clashing with metal surprised everyone, and the two stood in the middle of the clearing clenching swords. Jiraiya could see a blue glow surrounding Naruto's weapon, and he realized with a smile that the kid was using wind chakra to strengthen the sword. Loosening his grip a bit and allowing the toad to lose his balance, Naruto appeared from the side and aimed a precise strike, which was blocked by the toad before it attempted a fierce kick at the genin. Naruto used a quick kawarimi and appeared on the other side, aiming another strike against the toad. Gamut Tsurugi managed to parry once more before aiming another attack on Naruto. This one merely sliced a couple of hairs as Naruto ducked and managed to strike the toad using the back of his sword's hilt. Not wanting to relent, Naruto charged the toad with his wind-infused weapon and swung his sword with all his strength. The toad saw the move and managed to parry the technique, albeit barely. The strength of the attack forced him to back off a bit. Jiraiya never ceased to smile as he observed Naruto's prowess with the sword in such a small time frame. He wondered what approach was used by Anko to achieve such great results. "You're good and all, kids, but now it seems I must increase the pace," the toad said before grabbing the second sword. Naruto immediately placed the prospect of being killed here. So far, he only managed a few hits here and there. His opponent was much stronger with just one sword. 2, now, would be suicide. Nevertheless, he stood there facing the toad, expecting the move. He would have to resort to other skills aside from swords. As soon as Game Tsurugi made his move, Naruto threw his sword in the air and began a quick series of hand seals, surprising Jiraiya. He gathered a great load of air inside his lungs. Fuetin Datapa, wind release. Great breakthrough technique. Before the toad could come within inches from Naruto, the boy unleashed a powerful gust of wind that sent the toad flying a great distance away. Besides this, the technique was laced with cutting chakra, so the toad's body was severely hurt. Despite that, the toad smiled as he got up and placed both swords on its back once more. It appeared in front of the blonde and landed on its hands on top of his shoulder. The toad didn't need to say anything, as Naruto clearly passed the test. It merely nodded before vanishing in smoke, surprising Naruto, who then turned to Jiraiya for questioning. He only had the chakra you supplied him with. Once that chakra runs out, he can't sustain the link and therefore has to go back to his realm. Nevertheless, you were a good kid. Go get some rest for the tournament. The blonde smirked before he said goodbye to the pervert. Jiraiya looked at the kid's back with a smile on his face. At first, he figured that it would be prudent to help Naruto more for the exams. Circumstances arose that interrupted that initial plan. After all, it's not every day he uncovers the existence of an organization out there that is after the nine-tailed beasts, including the one that resides inside Naruto. Their members were unknown at this point, but his sources said that all of them were S-ranked criminals. If one of them was to come after the genin, Naruto wouldn't know how to defend himself. This meant that the kid must be trained, and by someone who can uncover his full potential. Mitarashi Anko's methods were brutal, Jiraiya remembered. She must have beaten the kid many times until he understood what Anko was trying to teach. However, Jiraiya knew ways around that in order to further achieve Naruto's untapped potential. And he wasn't thinking of the cursed seal. Tournament day. 2 days passed in a blur for Konoha as the date of the last phase of the Chunin exams arrived. The entire village was ecstatic, and lots of merchants and tourists flooded the streets. Unfortunately, the boom in the village's economy comes with a bigger risk. With this many, it becomes rather difficult to provide the same level of security. Anbus were doing everything they could to scout the entire region after probable schemes from outside sources. The stadium, which would soon host the Chunin tournament, was slowly being filled with all kinds of people. From simple tourists to daimyos, to low-level genins to higher-ranking jounin officers, everyone came to see a splendid show. The most anticipated was no doubt the first Uchiha ever to appear since the clan's massacre a long time ago. Uchiha Sasuke was considered the safest bet there was, with Hyuga Neji coming in close second. The Chunin hopefuls were already aligned in front of the host Shiranui Genma, a special jounin that used a bandana to hold his hair and had a senbon on his mouth. All the genin's attention turned to Naruto, though, as he appeared wearing different clothes, as well as the sword strapped on his back. His posture did change a bit from 1 month ago. Sasuke kept looking at his partner, wondering about the change in appearance. He wondered about the changes that weren't visible, his skills of the ninja arts. The sword on his back indicates that the dobe has been practicing kenjutsu. However, 1 month alone of practice with it couldn't be counted as an advantage. Sasuke was tempted to use his Sharingan and take a closer look at Naruto's chakra, but in doing that, he would be violating the rules. It took half an hour for the crowd to fill the seats and for the Hokage to announce the beginning of the tournament. By Sandame's side were his 2 bodyguards, as well as the Kazekage, who accepted the invitation to attend the exams next to the Hokage. Genma nodded at the Hokage and issued all the genins to leave the area except for Uzumaki Naruto and Hyuga Neji. Neji, as usual, was showing his confident, bearing smug attitude at Naruto, while the blonde looked at Neji, promising to deliver the punishment like he said before. Naruto remembered Anko's words about emotions in the middle of direct combat. She explained to him constantly that by no means could he charge against a Hyuga face-to-face in direct combat. In other words, standing within inches from his opponent was sure defeat. Naruto wouldn't have that and created some space between them while waiting for the proctor to start the battle. Of course, it didn't mean that Neji wouldn't use a few words here and then. You should forfeit right now. You may have changed your clothes, but you're still a failure. Neji even widened his smirk to show that Naruto was too much beneath him. I promised I would beat you, and I do intend to fulfill it. I've trained long and hard to get here, and I'm not going to back away just because my opponent's ego is bigger than the Hokage monument. Naruto got into fighting position, earning a slight mocking laughter from Neji before he also got into position. Genma looked at one another before issuing the fight to begin. Neji charged with his speed and his Byakugan on, as he already pinpointed Naruto's Tenketsus. As soon as Neji arrived within inches from Naruto's position, he aimed at one of them, but was surprised when Naruto managed to block the strikes by blocking his wrists. Neji increased the pace of his strikes, but Naruto managed to follow him while maintaining a safe distance. As soon as he managed to block one last strike, Naruto placed one step forward and disrupted Niji's guard before landing a powerful punch on Niji's face, surprising everyone. Naruto understood what Anko was trying to tell him about the Gyuukan style of fighting. The blonde wasn't about to wait for another attack and summoned 3 cage bunchins to attack while he remained behind. The bunchins immediately charged, and Niji used his agility to try and take care of them. To his surprise, though, the team of bunchins fought with deadly proficiency and each managed to cover the other. So when Niji moved to strike one, he had to back off because another would move from behind and attack. His Byakugan kept close attention of all 4 Narutos, even the one that stood at the back doing nothing. He gritted his teeth in annoyance at this loser before quickening the pace and dealing with all 3 at the same time. His smirk didn't last long as an entire barrage of shurikens came charging at him with impressive speed. Niji managed to dodge the projectiles, but snarled once he felt one of them slice his face a little bit, causing a small line of blood to appear. Naruto smirked and pulled more shurikens from his pouch before throwing them at Niji. The Hyuga managed to see them with the Byakugan and was about to dodge when he saw Naruto doing hand seals. Everyone became surprised at seeing Naruto performing an elemental jutsu. Futon Repushu, Wind Release, Gale Wind Palm Technique. The projectiles received the extra push and increased their speed. Niji couldn't keep up, and the projectiles were approaching fast. He was hoping not to use this technique until later on, but the damn loser was pushing his buttons a lot. Niji begins to spin his body rapidly and focuses chakra throughout all his tenketsus at the same time, earning shocked looks from the Hyuga clan's main branch because that move happens to be from them. Niji managed to create a dome of blue chakra that was capable of deflecting the shurikens, even with the aid of wind chakra. Naruto sure was surprised since he didn't know about that ability. "You see now how much of a failure you are compared to me," Niji said with a smirk on his face, but he was slightly bothered by the fact that Naruto was smiling as well. "That was a neat trick, Niji. But it's merely defensive. So far, you haven't even landed one hit on me, whereas I managed to draw your precious blood." The entire stadium was dead silent as everyone was focused on the battle. So far, Naruto's growth was the most surprising, considering that a month ago, he could barely do anything right. Now, here he was holding his own against a genin more experienced and who was nominated Rookie of the Last Year 1 year ago. Niji, for his part, couldn't admit it out loud, but Naruto was right. So far, the only one with a clear hit was the failure. Niji smirked, though. Naruto may have improved in skills lately, but at the distance he was in, there was no doubt in Niji's mind that he would win this match with his next move. "This is when our fight ends. You are within my field of divination." Naruto looked surprised because he didn't know what was going on. He wasn't about to stay still, though, that's for sure. As soon as Niji vanished, in order to begin his deadly technique, Naruto finished a couple of hand seals needed to replace himself with one of the shurikens that he threw at Niji. When the Hyuga landed the first 2 strikes, he was shocked to see Naruto's body vanishing and a shuriken appeared. The Hyuga's Byakugan spotted Naruto already finishing a sequence of hand seals before gathering air inside his lungs. Naruto blew up a strong torrent of wind straight at Niji, who didn't have time to use his ultimate defense technique and received the full technique. His body was sent flying while the cutting edge of the technique began its work, giving Niji a great number of wounds. Niji's body was dragged a long distance away while clenching his teeth at the amount of pain received by the wind technique. Everyone in the stadium looked shocked at such a strong technique. Tenten was one of them, as she was sure Naruto wouldn't have a chance against Niji. Anko appeared smiling at the brat's unique usage of Kawarimi and sneak attacked the enemy. There was no way Niji would get up from that attack, and even if he did, his body was so badly hurt. "It appears that Naruto learned a lot from you, Anko," Kakashi said by her side, which earned a nod from the woman. The brat owned the entire match from beginning to finish. Anko commented with a smile on her face, earning nods from Asuma and Kurenai who were sitting close to them. Asuma smiled seeing as the scroll he gave to Anko helped the kid. He was happy to see it as he had found another wind user in Konoha. Sasuke smirked at Naruto's new techniques from the genin booth, as did Shikamaru and Shino. Naruto certainly surprised everyone. Back at the arena, Niji slowly got up from the ground as he held his right bleeding arm. His entire body was beaten and covered with bruises. Whatever the failure hit him with, it hurt more than anything he ever felt before. He managed to drag his body close to the center of the arena as he looked at Naruto with his snarling teeth. Genma saw the state Niji's body was in and nodded, seeing as the fight was over. Before he could end it, however, Niji urged him not to by shouting to the proctor. Apparently, the kid received a dirty blow to his pride upon being beaten by someone he considered a failure. Unfortunately, though, in Niji not allowing the battle to end, it also allowed Naruto to move and deliver a strong reverse kick on his chest, which sent him flying once more towards the ground. Unfortunately, Niji's head ended up receiving the first impact, and he was unconscious soon afterward, thus not being able to continue. Winner of the first match is Uzumaki Naruto. Genma announced, before pointing his hand at the baffled Naruto, who took a long while to understand that he had won the match. Up on the stands, everyone was contemplating the first round of the Chunin tournament, as it happened to be quite a shock to those with conservative ideals. After all, it's not every day that a Hyuga elite is so easily beaten by someone without any clan history like Naruto. The fact that Naruto was considered a class clown and that he barely graduated the academy contributed to everyone's shock at the moment. The blonde went from a barely passable shinobi to Chunin material in 1 month's time. Even if he didn't know about Niji's main house techniques, Naruto had done his homework regarding the Byakugan and the Gyuuken, understanding that it only took one opening to end a fight. That alone gave him a great number of points for promotion. The genins from Naruto's classroom all gawked at what they saw. Sakura and Ino had doubts if Naruto could beat Niji, hence why none of them even considered the possibility. Chaoji and Kiba thought the same way, though they acknowledged Naruto's severe improvement. They couldn't point out any wasted move from the blonde. And all of them somehow knew that Naruto had yet to show all his skills. From what they saw, Naruto had a sword strapped on his back, and he not once bothered to reach it. Furthermore, he didn't use that strange energy sensed at the Forest of Death, which could be considered an easy option for him. The opinion that came from the cage booth was mixed. Sandaime Hokage looked at the boy at the arena accepting the cheers from the audience with a smile on his face. He knew that Anko's method of training would do wonders for the boy. The Kazekage, though, couldn't help but smile as his second experiment was getting stronger. Genma, at the arena, quickly announced a second match and ushered Uchiha Sasuke and Sabaku no Gaara to join him at the arena. Naruto went quickly to the genin booth as he passed by Sasuke, but not before giving him thumbs up. Sasuke, strangely, returned the greeting with a confident smile and a nod of his head. He said that he would face Naruto next and told the blonde to get ready. Naruto nodded as he watched Sasuke leave the tunnel before suddenly he felt the offensive aura approach him from behind. 1 second later, Gaara passed by him with his cold exterior and looked at Naruto from the corner of his eye. The two looked at each other for a while before Gaara turned his sight towards the end of the tunnel that would lead to the arena and started walking. Mother is asking for your blood. After I'm done with the Uchiha, you're next. Naruto was used to strong enemies using the same level of killing intent as Gaara, so he wasn't as phased as Gaara expected. Naruto then went up the stairs that would lead to the genin booth. He was confident that Sasuke wouldn't be defeated that easily, even if this guy appeared to be the same as him. Sasuke x Gaara. After Sasuke joined the arena next to Genma, the special Jounin waited for the crowd to finish their unbelievably loud and exaggerated cheer for the kid. As the last loyal Uchiha, everyone placed a great load of expectation on the kid. Genma knew that the kid shouldn't bear such a burden. The look on his face, though, indicated that he wasn't concerned about the pressure. The clan never before produced poor quality shinobi, and Sasuke would be no exception. The only thing needed of him was not to succumb to others' expectations and lead his life as normal as possible. The crowd attended Genma's wish and silenced after a couple of minutes, allowing the special Jounin to proceed with the fight. Looking at both combatants for a while, Genma authorized the fight to commence. Uchiha Sasuke wasted no time and charged at Gaara with straight taijutsu through a speed that he didn't possess before. Gaara wasn't phased though and sent a beam of sand to stop the Uchiha's movement. Sasuke evaded the attack and got into position behind the sand genin before aiming a straight punch at Gaara's face, which was blocked by the sand. The sand genin was once again surprised that one more ninja managed to sneak behind him. Sasuke maintained his pressure and left Gaara's back, going forward and landing a fierce kick on Gaara's chest. The sand wasn't fast enough to block it, and Gaara was sent flying because of it. Sasuke once more didn't relent and went through hand seals. Kaiten Gakakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Grand Fireball Technique. The gigantic meteor of fire charged Gaara with impressive speeds, but the sand managed to block the impact. The technique was so hot that it turned the sand into glass. Sasuke charged once more, and this time Gaara attacked more aggressively, instead of merely defending himself. Because of this, Sasuke was forced to activate his Sharingan in order to evade the sand projectiles thrown by Gaara. After evading the last of them, Sasuke grabbed a few shurikens of his own and threw them at Gaara. The sand genin, for his part, just stood there, but the sand lifted a barrier to catch the projectiles. Sasuke saw what would happen from the Sharingan and charged while the sand barrier was transformed into a sand bunshin, a replica of Gaara. Sasuke connected a fierce chop on the bunshin's neck, thus dispelling it, before charging against the original once more. Even if the Uchiha managed to dodge Gaara's sand without the Sharingan, now he could see it in slow motion, evading it and landing a strong punch on Gaara's face, even before he realized Sasuke's actual position. After the blows, Gaara's face began to show cracks, revealing his sand armor. His anger at this was quite evident, and Sasuke only smirked at this. It was clear that he was being underestimated by Gaara, and that would cost him dearly. Sasuke just remained in his usual position in order to study his opponent's next moves, as well as gather a bit of his stamina back. Moving like that posed great stress on his limbs. Suddenly, though, Sasuke's instinct told him to jump just as a sand beam erupted from the ground, trying to catch his leg. Looking at Gaara, he was momentarily surprised because he couldn't anticipate the movement. He realized, in mid-air, that the attack came from underneath, and he couldn't see it. In mid-air, Sasuke went through hand seals for a new jutsu he had mastered, thanks to Kakashi-sensei. Raiten Rakurai, Lightning Release. Thunderbolt Technique. Suddenly a small black cloud appeared up in the sky and released a thin lightning towards Gaara, who was caught by surprise. The sand merely consisted of earth, and earth was weak against lightning. Sasuke's technique pierced Gaara's defense like it wasn't there in the first place. Gaara emitted a loud scream as thousands of volts circulated through his body. Suddenly, though, the scream changed its tone, and it sounded demonic, much to everyone's surprise, including Sasuke, as he landed on the ground. Gaara started bleeding and looked at Sasuke with pure rage. His eyes were suddenly transformed as the sand around him began to envelope Gaara in a form of cocoon. Sasuke wouldn't allow that and unleashed another grand fireball technique at Gaara. Sasuke was surprised, though, when he saw that this new barrier not only parried his attack but also suffered no damage whatsoever. Looking at the cocoon in front of him, Sasuke realized that he needed something stronger to penetrate it. He doubted that his first Raiten jutsu would be as effective and decided to use something else. Normally, he would use this trump card later, seeing as this was his first battle of the tournament. However, the circumstances pretty much demanded it. He gave some space and performed a sequence of 3 hand seals before holding his right hand facing up and the left one holding his right wrist. Charging this technique would take some time, but he was confident that he would have it. If not, his Sharingan will warn him beforehand. Suddenly, before everyone's shocked eyes, an unbearable noise began to fill the arena as Sasuke's right hand started to glow with lightning energy. Those who recognized the technique looked at the creator for explanation, but the man's gaze was entirely fixed on his student. Kakashi told Sasuke to use this technique only when a comrade was in danger, and he understood why the Uchiha was considering it. This Gaara managed to produce a tough defense that only A-ranked jutsus could pierce. Furthermore, no fire jutsu could pierce earth-based techniques, so Sasuke's actions are at least understandable. As soon as the technique was finished, Sasuke charged with all the speed he could muster, as it was required of him. Half of the technique relied on the user's speed in order to cause more impact. When Sasuke was inches from Gaara's cocoon, his eyes alerted him to sudden earth spikes that arose, and he managed to dodge it before thrusting his strongest technique inside. The lightning attack managed to pierce the wall, and Sasuke heard the noise of flesh being pierced before smiling. Gaara emitted another scream, but this time it was completely demonic, which caused the civilian part of the stand to shake in fear. The wound was so deep that Gaara couldn't maintain its hold on the cocoon, and thus the sand began to dissolve, showing an injured Gaara. He was holding his injured shoulder while looking at his opponent. Sasuke was about to charge once more and deal with the fight for good when a great number of feathers started falling from the sky, surprising both Sasuke and Genma, as well as the entire stadium. All ninjas were now prepared for anything, as those feathers weren't a part of the Chunin tournament. Thanks for watching my video, leave a like if you enjoyed my video, and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. If you want the next part of this story, let me know in the comment box. See you next time, till then sayonara.